2025 drafts will be coming up sooner than you realize, so the prep work starts right now here on Special. Well, really not right now. Started last week with the QBs. We're going to do what we always do here in the early parts of the season, I guess. Really, while the season's still going on, we're going to dig in on some of the numbers here. And I say it up top in all these videos where this is not the sexiest video I'll do all year. Of course, I'm still here, so it's still fairly sexy. But it's not really like a fun video we're doing here. This is like doing your cardio. This is like doing stretching for a workout. So what we're trying to do here is get the numbers, get a read on things, look back at 2024, look forward to 2025, talk about some of the top rookie RBs coming up in this class that you're going to yearn to draft. Is what the title of this video is. Yearn felt appropriate when I was doing a thumbnail last night, doing the title and the YouTube, all that last night. You tell me if yearn's appropriate today. But let's look at 2024 numbers real fast. What do we get right? What do we get wrong about the rookie class? One thing, obviously, that I think I have to point to right away, my boy Bucky Irving, a man that I dug my heels on bright and early. A lot of the industry out there was not quite coming along the same way. He is a player where you look at his numbers last year, and I think you could see a lot of what we liked here. High avoided tackle rate, high EPA, about a 34% avoided tackle rate for him in Oregon the year before last, 0.197 EPA per rush. A little bit weaker in the pass game with a negative 0.01 EPA, but still a 38% avoided tackle rate there. Really handled 8-man box as well, 27% avoided tackle rate there. And that's, again, a smaller guy going into an 8-man box. Good to see. Getting 3 red zone touches a game, good EPA in the red zone, a little bit of a negative EPA in the receiving part of things in the red zone. Point being for Bucky Irving, I think he's one of those prospects where it's important to kind of remind myself, and I was going through this a little bit yesterday too, like what are the things that I look for every year that matter? Obviously, I know them kind of like the back of my hand. Avoided tackle rate, plus EPA guy got volume would also be great. If you're getting over 15 touches a game or opportunities, including targets, that'd be a great thing overall. Really, the main thing that I wanted to see too is a few guys that I didn't get into quite as much. I'm going to check the chats too here. Appreciate yes, sexy. Yeah, thank you for that. For a need like you, nerd, I'm sure. And yearning, Jetsy season, yes, all that stuff. So for Bucky, I think it's pretty obvious what worked out here. And really the other part of it too would be kind of ignoring the athletic testing stuff, or at least maybe not ignoring it, but being a little bit less locked in on it. It's one of those things too where the RAS testing is kind of your second wave of draft stuff, where right now you'll have guys like me, a few other people that do originate their own takes at this time of year. They'll kind of drive a lot of the markets overall for that early rookie burst. A lot of what comes after that comes from having people do well at the combine, do poorly at the combine, all of that. For Bucky Irving, he was one player where I got spooked by RAS testing. I kind of I didn't back down a little bit. I didn't take him in every draft at that point forward. But I think he's one of those things here where you see the guy perform well. I do think you maybe have to be a little bit more quizzical, a little more questioning, a little more overall suspicious, I guess the best way to put it, of RAS testing, because sometimes guys get shifted up a lot from that. Guys like last year, Jaylen Wright, who's a player who didn't perform that well, but overall did have the crazy speed coming out of his athletic testing. Jaylen Wright does nothing this year, but he also did have some blockers for him. Like maybe if Jaylen Wright went to, I don't know, maybe he went to the Niners, he got the Garendo run out. Maybe it'd be better for him. It's like that's one of those things here where like good performer, you kind of ignore the RAS stuff. The situation's ultimately what matters the most, though. For Bucky Irving, really the reason I recommitted to him was the Rachaad White thing, and knowing that going back to last year, for Rachaad White, the team had talked about he wasn't breaking enough explosive plays. They wanted to be a thing where they wanted to get more of that in. Then they draft a guy like Bucky Irving, who does add a lot of explosive plays. So I would say that for, Bucky Irving, he was kind of a perfect storm of things that allow you to overlook athletic testing. But really, the athletic testing drives up kind of the overall draft capital a lot here. You can see Jaylen Wright, plus EPA guy, high avoided tackle rate, all of that, but not a lot of volume. The sample size is not that big when you have 13 opportunities a game, compared to Bucky's 18. That's a little bit of a gap there. I would say that that's sort of looking at these numbers, I think you make the case either way for a lot of guys. Really the main takeaway I'd give for you all. And that includes me. That includes anybody else who can do this kind of content. And it all comes down to situation. It comes down to still stuff like this. Like we got Braden here asking about Marshawn Lloyd here compared to Bucky. For Marshawn Lloyd, he had less volume here, but really the numbers, you kind of make a similar case to him as you would for Jaylen Wright. Maybe a somewhat similar case what you make for Bucky Irving, even though both guys here, Jaylen Wright and Marshawn Lloyd, getting less touches. You'd probably make the same case for Marshawn Lloyd as you'd make for Tyrone Tracy. Two guys getting about 12-ish opportunities a game in their last year in college. Marshawn Lloyd more efficient with a less efficient rather, 0.06 EPA per rush given up, by him on every play. Tyrone Tracy, 0.12 EPA per rush. So those guys pretty close to even there. Similarly high avoided tackle rate. Marshawn Lloyd avoiding more tackles. Tyrone Tracy more efficient. In the pass game, Marshawn Lloyd is a little bit better. really high avoided tackle rate here, 85% in the pass plays, compared to Tyrone Tracy, who was a converted receiver, only a 21% avoided tackle rate. I think those guys to me should have been more like these guys were one-to-one plays. They're both not getting a ton of volume. They both showed a little bit in limited sample size. But I think for me last year, I had a bit of a bias point with Tyrone Tracy about just overall, like, he came into the process a little bit late for me because he wasn't on any of the top mock drafts out there. Wasn't really going that high in anything. I wasn't in on him. Did see later on, like, oh, guys at Underdog, like I think Josh Norris really the big one. I remember beating the drum for Tyrone Tracy. It was one thing where I probably should have adjusted because I liked Marshawn Lloyd, liked what I saw from him. Obviously, my own priors being a USC fan, I'm a USC alum. I liked Lloyd enough from that prism. Then I saw the numbers here. I'm like, wow, he's missing a lot of tackles, whatever. But in reality, the fact that, again, he was getting a lot of touches. The athletic testing for Lloyd and Tracy is a little bit better, I think, favoring Lloyd, but still both good enough, I believe. Both guys missing tackles, both guys doing okay in the pass game. I would say really overall for Marshawn Lloyd at this point, and to be clear, Braid, wasn't really talking about your thing, it was kind of a jumping off point for me. I think that there's a little bit of that too, where we talked about kind of and this is a lot of stuff coming together, but that is how my brain works, so bear with me. The Commanders thing last year in best ball was a big thing for me, where a big learning point rather, where I started taking Jahan Dotson more because I was like, you know what, I'm taking McLaurin this much, I should probably start taking Dotson more. Probably start taking, I took Ben Sinnott to get him out throughout because I liked him in the pre-draft process. But I really didn't treat it like, okay, Terry McLaurin is one tier of receiver. Everybody else in Commanders, which probably should be treated evenly. So I should have been taking Jahan Dotson at the same rate I was taking Diami Brown, at the same rate I was taking Olamide Zaccheaus, at the same rate I was taking Ben Sinnott, at the same rate I was taking Zach Ertz, because I didn't believe in that tier of guy quite as much. I believe in McLaurin a lot, believe in those guys a lot less. I think it's the same thing for RBs, where it's like, okay, Lloyd has this going for him, this going for him. Tracy has this going for him, this going for him. These guys are even, kind of a tier-based approach. Whereas for Bucky Irving, he'd be in the tier of like, okay, this guy had good volume, produced an efficiency. The bad part of that is that I probably still would be on Audric Estime, and that didn't work out very well. But obviously nothing worked out in the Denver backfield. So is that a talent thing? Is that a situation thing? That's going to be the balance of this all. Right now, for where we're looking at the draft process, at this point of the year, we're heading into the big board in January. Really only care about the talent, and we can't figure out who's going to land where, who's going to do all that. Obviously, guys getting high draft capital means higher chances of them succeeding, but ultimately you're going to have your Buckies, you're going to have your Estimates, two guys who I think would have both graded out the best for me last year, and I'm pretty confident they did based on how much I talked about them. And then you have guys like your Lloyd and your Tracy, and those guys are worth shots, but at a different level. I think, and ultimately too, it just comes down to where these guys get drafted. Is it a Rachaad White there? Is it a good offense with Rachaad White, or is it the Broncos where you have their own version of Rachaad White and Javonte Williams, but the team itself is not good. The run game is not good. So, yeah, I mean, Sean Payton thing, I guess, but it's really more like, are there blockers to a guy getting there in terms of like team success, players in front of him? Those are the stuff we're going to worry about more as we kind of get a read on where players are going to go. For right now, though, I think it's mostly pure talent based, and that's sort of what we're going to try to approach things with. That said, talked enough about 2024 here, and that was really more about my lessons taken away. I don't know that I should open the video with that because I think probably people want me to get into like, Jeanty's this and that right away. But in reality, like that's really the biggest thing for me. And as I kind of get more nuanced about this, is now like my third year doing this for content on stream. My fifth year doing it like as my own kind of prep process now. So I've kind of noticed some trends for myself, things that made me better, things that made me worse, things too, like the hits I've had, like Tyler Algier a couple of years ago, Bucky recently, like, there's been others in between, I guess to a lesser extent, guys like A-Chan last year. There's sort of lessons you get along the way here. So I'm just trying to kind of distill it down here up top and probably do an awful job of it. That's these videos. Again, it's an unrefined video here up top. What's not unrefined, though, Ashton Jeanty and the run game here. Of course, timestamps are going to be down below, too, if you want to skip around. You can see my sheet as well here, all the names I have on. There might be a few more that you want to see added. I tried to go through guys who are most likely to get drafted highly, looked at some other secondary things and all that. So basically, like, for where I view these rookies, these are the ones right now that seem likely to have a shot at being drafted. A few of them are on this list as well, like Nicholas Singleton. I just thought he looked interesting, but he's now going back to school. So some of them may go back. Some of them may not get drafted well at all. We're going to talk about all the ones that seem to matter right now here with my list of 21. And thank you for this one here by Kreoth. Your process explainer is gold content, good stuff. Thank you. Look, it's a ramble. Like, I think that's the thing. Is like, I'm not coming in really with like I should probably come with a more defined take in it, but it really is like one of those things where it's a lot more art than science, I think, is this prospect stuff. And obviously the numbers are the numbers, and that's going to be a big part of it too. So the numbers for Ashton Jeanty, looked great to me in the run game. So he's a guy, you saw him kind of get critiqued throughout the year. If you're following the Heisman stuff, especially Travis Hunter fans shit all over Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty fans shit all over Travis Hunter. I was more team Jeanty, and that may be shocking given the fact how much I love receivers and tend to eschew running backs and try to get guys later on. Jeanty, to me, is an elite talent. You can see it here at the avoided tackle rate. 33% avoided tackle rate when you're getting 28.4 touches a game, 29.1 opportunities when you include the targets in there as well. Jeanty, just a beast overall. I said it before on Twitter, and I'll just give it away right now. I think Jeanty's probably a 1-2 turn guy the moment drafts open. Well, maybe not the moment drafts open. I think he gets there pretty fast. He might open third, fourth round to be a possibility. You should be jamming him then because he should get to probably that 1-2 turn. The issue with Jeanty is I'm not sold that he gets good RAS testing for himself. And if that were the case, he probably comes down a little bit at some point. But I think if he comes down a little bit because the athletic profile wasn't great or wasn't, super elite, he'll still probably go in like the second round in drafts. So if he does open third, fourth round, God forbid he opens fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth round, just grab Jeanty whenever you can because he is a safe prospect. He's very likely to go in the first round. Is he better than Bijan? Different player than Bijan, less size, but I think more elite running ability, more elite shiftiness, but similar avoided tackle rates. Jeanty about 33%. Bijan a couple years ago was 33%. So is Quinshon Judkins, that same offense. So how much does that matter? I don't know. Missing about a third of your tackles, missing about half your tackles in the pass game. All good stuff for Jeanty. And you watch the film too, he'll make guys miss. He also will get straight line speed and get going a little bit there. And I think that's sort of what you're wanting to see. The comp for me, size-wise, looks a little bit Gibbsy out there. Definitely doesn't have the Gibbs speed. Gibbs a 4.3 range guy. Jeanty going to be closer to high 4.4s, maybe 4.5 if it doesn't go that well for him. And if he does test really high, if he does get into, God forbid, low 4.4s, if not high 4.3s, he would certainly get, probably go in top 15 would be my guess. If he's not already going there, would go the highest version possible of himself. He does have Gibbs adjacent speed. But for Jeanty overall, a lot of times I think in the drafts, people chase your Garendos, people chase the H-Chans of Jalen Wrights, these straight line burners. Jeanty is not that, but he is so talented overall in terms of everything else. So Jeanty, to me, one guy I'll be taking the moment drafts open. I have no reservations about him. I think he gets good draft capital. If he goes to a team like the Raiders, which the possibility has been linked there a little bit in mock drafts, going top 10, he's going to look good. If he went to the Cowboys, he's probably a better version of Rico Dowdle day one, though Dowdle would probably be a blocker there. A new coaching staff coming in, though, that could go either way. For Jeanty, though, a lot of logical spots. Vikings, another one with Aaron Jones being a free agent. Things could work out really well for him. He could also end up behind another back and kind of get screwed a little bit there. But you're talking about a guy, got a ton of volume, did well with it, didn't get stuffed a lot as well. Competition stuff, I really wouldn't care that much about. He played Oregon, who has legit athletes, diced them up the same way as everybody else. I think Jeanty's really a great prospect. Have no issue being with him from the moment things start. Yes, Jeanty is the first back I've talked about. Why do I have to explain? Justin, I appreciate you, buddy. I'm doing the stream. I would have to walk you through the stream as well. I did an intro, and now we're talking about Jeanty. We're going to talk in the order of the sheet. Remember, Malik Neighbors opened a big board in the fourth rounder, definitely jamming Jeanty on day one. Yes, that's probably going to be the case. I mean, Malik Neighbors held in third, fourth round for most of the big board. He didn't really take the big leap up until after he got drafted by the Giants, and then really got there, I think, was more reliably second round. But anyway, yeah, that's certainly a case there. In previous years, you saw guys like Anthony Richardson going in the 220s. I don't think it's going to be the case anymore. Last year, it seemed like they got him closer. But generally, I do think they're giving these guys, when they launch the ADPs, they're giving them the softest possible version of where they're going to go. So Jeanty, I would guess, worst case, probably fifth, sixth round. If they're lazy this year for some reason, he might be just completely un-ADP'd in the beginning. But if I had to guess, they'll probably have him fourth, fifth, sixth round, somewhere in that range. And he's going to likely go pretty fast, second round. We got Jeanty overall, the one flaw for him, by the way, pass game work. Not a lot of targets per out run, 17% there, negative 0.2 EPA on those plays. Not really good numbers. Still don't think that's necessarily on him. Could be more of a Boise State thing. Could be more of a situation here for Ashton Jeanty where he didn't show the upside in the pass game, but the raw talent is there. Pass blocking wise, you got a Bucky thing there where he's probably not going to hold up great versus pass protection, but it is still a willfulness stat and all that. So for Ashton Jeanty, at this point, I really don't want to point out the flaws too much in the pass game because I don't know that's on him quite as much. But it is not looking great overall when you don't get that many targets and you also don't have a great EPA doing it. But still, again, it's Ashton Jeanty. He's great in the run game. Expect him to be there if you give him kind of willful effort, giving him screens and things like that. Versus 8-man boxes, he was also good. Positive EPA, saw 7 of them a game, so teams tried to stop him. Couldn't do it. Still a 22% avoided tackle rate versus 8-man box plays. About 5 red zone rushes a game. Positive EPA still on those. Really, the main thing for me that you see is like he had a ton of volume, still really efficient with it, still missed a ton of tackles with it. Like none of the efficiency metrics dropped. So I can keep harping on it. It would be fun to watch the clips here, but I don't want to do it on an unpremium stream because basically you get fucking copyright struck right away. But really watch Ashton Jeanty highlights. You'll see it right away. He's just a great player. Barry Sanders adjacent in some clips. Bucky Irving more looking like him in a lot of other clips, I think. He's just a great play. The issues are going to pay the full price tag for him, but I think it's worth it still. But then, one caveat I would give to you, besides the pass game stuff, your risk is really that he just goes somewhere that's not that good and you're paying a price tag that is a really good spot. And also 1-2 where like the guy performed really well. So you kind of need to hit both outcomes well here where he gets the perfect landing spot. Team drafts him highly. They're committed to give him the ball 20 plus times a game for him to hit kind of wherever he goes. He's kind of like going to be the equivalent of a running back Marvin Harrison this year, I think. And you got to be a little bit more mindful of that. But still, I would take the leap at this point. What's the deal with YEARN all caps, some pup-related thing? It's just a word. Just a word. Sometimes you put different titles on. We do these videos every day. It's just how it goes. But you're going to yearn for it. Jetsy's worst game this year is still a nice game. Sure, that too. No, just the thing that I did myself. Just the thing I did myself. Number 2, we got Quinshon Judkins. I don't use AI or titling for anything. I just do the titles myself. I know him at this point from having reviewed things, but yeah, I make up things off the top of my head. Sometimes just pure SEO. Sometimes it's me putting a silly title on, more like a Davis Maddox thing. Today, you got more of a Davis Maddox style. It's also just the best verb that came to mind, really. Quinshon Judkins. So he's the first guy here I'm going to shit on a little bit. Quinshon Judkins getting a lot of hype overall. I don't know that he's a first-round pick. I certainly haven't seen that really. Jeanty, the only one I think expected to go first round. Judkins, to me, the lesser back in Ohio State's backfield. The guys I have italicized, I'm projecting to have very good 40 times. Treveyeon Henderson, about 4.3s is the reports I've seen. Jaydon Blue, another fast one here. The rest of these guys all around 4.45, 4.5-ish, somewhere in that range. For guys like Skattebo, he is probably more like a 4.55 guy, but he's a really weird case we're going to talk about in a moment. Judkins, to me, low EPA per rush, 0.06 EPA per rush, low avoided tackle rate, 16% avoided tackle rate, low receiving EPA, 0.1. He's not negative, but he's not really earning targets that well, only getting 6 routes per game. Versus 8-man boxes, didn't see him a ton, was okay with it, but really low sample size stuff there. Not a lot of red zone work in the split backfield with him and Treveyeon Henderson. Judkins is one to me where he looks like Zach Evans watching the film. And Zach Evans is a guy, too, that I remember people being really into, and I was like, he's okay. Just like kind of a straight standing up runner. Not a lot of shiftiness to him, as you can see at that low avoided tackle rate. For Quinshon Judkins, I really don't think that there's a lot to love. Good size would be my guess. Decent speed, but not great speed. He kind of seems like just the guy. So Judkins, to me, I'm not sure what the merit really is besides the fact it was a low sample size and your hope is that he gets more volume and does more. But volume is a predictor of volume, both in college and in the pros. Like even guys like Chase Brown got a ton of volume at Illinois a couple of years ago, wasn't very good with it, comes to the Bengals, doesn't get volume that first year. Then the first opportunity for there to be volume, he does get it this year. So that's sort of how the path of a lot of these guys go. But Judkins not getting volume in college with Henderson being there. Henderson greatly outperforming him in the exact same offensive situation. Better EPA, per rush, similar avoided tackle rate, but a little bit better there. Better yards per rush. Better yards after contact, despite being a smaller back. So I think for Judkins, he's the first one I'd plant the flag for. Not being that into him. There's one guy here on this list who looked very Tank Bigsby-ish to me in a not good way. Judkins, I would say similar to that. But really the comp for me is kind of Zach Evans. Like I really watched him as like, I feel like I was back watching Ole Miss Zach Evans film from a couple of years ago where he's okay. Like he's not bad. If he gets in a great offensive situation, he might not be a bad player. But if he's a guy that goes higher than Hampton, that goes higher than Henderson, that goes higher than Devin Neal, just to kind of highlight some guys that stand out to me so far, I probably don't want to be there. So Judkins is one right away. It's not really my guy. Hampton is not a round one back. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Different time in the NFL. You got to be really special at this point in the NFL to be a round one RB. So Judkins, I'm going to say not a no, but a right now, I'd say thumbs in the middle, leaning down is where I'd go for Judkins. Jeanty, thumbs up, but you are absorbing that Marvin Harrison early draft capital risk. Judkins, I don't see a ton of talent there. Film didn't wow me either. Good team too, and maybe one big playoff game here, one championship game. Maybe that does something for him. But yeah, I'm not sold on Judkins. Omarion Hampton, the guy, and this is going to be a deep cut, compared to the RB comps I usually give. The guy that stood out to me as looking like DeMarco Murray. Not very fast, really efficient, I wouldn't say efficient even, really proficient RB in terms of just being big, kind of doing the small stuff there, getting you 2 yards when you need 2 yards, getting in the end zone when he gets into the red zone. That's where I see Omarion Hampton. A lot of volume as well. If you go through the game logs, just crazy volume stats where he's putting up 25 carries for 200 yards. Well, maybe not 200, but like 25 carries for 150 yards, 30 carries for 200 yards. I mean, I should honestly just go through the game log real fast because like Omarion Hampton's game log is kind of a wild one to see. Omarion Hampton game log. You look through the numbers here. So 30 for 129, 11 for 77. Not that good there, but pretty efficient. 25 for 210, 19 for 139, 29 for 103, 23 for 106, 18 for 137, 26 for 105, 32 for 172, 35 for 244 versus Wake, 11 for 53. I don't know what happened there. They just lost, probably a bad game script. 22 for 185. And in all these games too, getting 3, 4 targets, 5 targets in some. Omarion Hampton is not like a great back, I guess I would say. Like he's not incredibly efficient, but a 0.1 EPA or 0.104 EPA on all these plays, still a 28% avoided tackle rate, and you watch him, or 26% avoided tackle rate, and you watch him, and he's not a shifty guy. He's not going side to side that much. Pass game work too. 18 routes per game, getting targeted 20% of the time he's running out. Good for a 0.36 EPA. For a guy who's as big as he is and not that fast, really good in the pass game. And that stands out when you watch him too. But obviously the numbers here really he looks like an electric pass catching RB here. Really the reliable work is going to be good for him. 5 rushes versus an 8-man box, had a 28% avoided tackle rate, still a barely positive EPA there. So he fought off 8-man boxes fairly well. Probably should be a little bit better given how big he is, but still fairly well. And 4.7 red zone rushes a game as well. So he got the work there. A little bit less efficient with receiving EPA in the red zone, but still got some targets. Say that for Hampton. He's probably my number 2 back in the class, I think. Would worry a little bit about the athletic testing if he's like a 4.55 guy. Maybe he'll get a little bit worse there. Faint chance of him being an Aldrich estimate, but I think the pass game work is good. And the fact too, like he is a bigger bodied dude. That's, he's built at 6 foot 220. You talk me into him being 6'1", 240. He looks like pretty, 240 would be a little bit much, but he looks large out there, at least compared to some of the North Carolina competition. I think Hampton can stand up versus pass pro. I think he's a very good play, just kind of a different back than Jeanty, more of a Braylon Allen kind of back. He is less youth going for him than Braylon Allen, still young enough. Braylon Allen was, I think, 19 coming out. Might have been 20, but Hampton's, I believe, 22. Make sure that's right. Omarion Hampton. He's 21, turning 22 in a couple weeks. So for Hampton, really impressive back, but impressive in a way. He doesn't feel like a modern back. It's probably the best way to put it. Like I was trying to figure out what the comp was because there are times out there where he looks like Adrian Peterson because he's like pretty big back there and he also kind of an upright runner. But he's just not fast enough. Like he doesn't have the burners to get there. I think he's a pretty good back. I think he's not a 4-3 back, and that's sort of what the modern NFL is looking for more. The fact he's got some wiggles positive in the pros, I would guess he probably ends up a little bit more like a 15% avoided tackle rate guy. I kind of see some Joe Mixon in him. I guess would be another good comp. But if you're getting Joe Mixon and DeMarco Murray as your comps, it's not really like the fun fantasy play quite as much as it is like he's got to get volume. If he does get volume, he's probably going to figure out a way to be good with it. So Omarion Hampton, we're going to get there in order. They're all listed right here. You can see RJ Harvey's name right here. Omarion Hampton, I think a very strong play with his size, combo, the pass game work, all of that. I think he could be on the field for 3 downs. So he can get the red zone work, get the goal line work. If he goes second round and goes somewhere where there's a weak starter in front of him, goes to kind of a Devin Singletary kind of spot, I think that's where Hampton has his best upside. If he, God forbid, got drafted entirely to himself, got a backfield, there's nobody else competing, I think he probably wins that backfield from day one. Hampton's probably going to make teams happy in training camp too, would be my guess. And if he has good draft capital with that, you're locked in. So Hampton's going to go lower than Jeanty, or he should, by a pretty decent margin, I would think, when the big board opens. And I would still keep taking him, though I would guess people like him enough. We had the chat talking about him going to the Steelers. And I think a lot of teams that are kind of, I want to say boomerish. I feel like I've seen beat reporters talking about Hampton as like your bell cow kind of back you're going to go to. I think a lot of people are going to be excited for him, maybe more than they should. But if Jeanty gets up to the second round, let's say, you got a shot at Hampton getting to the dead zone a little bit more, maybe the 6th, 5th round. But I don't think he goes higher than that. And that might be an aggressive estimation. Like, he could go in the 100s. If he's going in the 100s, I'd take him a lot. If he's going more like Jonathan Brooks went last year, I'd take him a lot. If he's going 5th round, probably a little bit less, would be my thought. Nicholas Singleton, not in this class, but I do want to highlight him. Very fast, decent avoided tackle rate, good EPA per rush, good EPA per reception. Did well versus 8-man boxes relatively. Didn't avoid a lot of tackles, still a positive EPA. Decent red zone work. Singleton, I think, would have been a pretty good prospect because of the speed. He probably graded out as like a 4.3-ish guy, one of the faster guys in this class. Not a lot of burners in this class. So Singleton would have gotten good draft capital, I think, at least, Garendo level 1, but he played better than Garendo in college. So Singleton would have been a good pick. He's not in the draft, though, but pretty fast for a guy who's got his size at 6 foot, 225 as his build, height, and weight. Treveyeon Henderson should be in this class, hopefully. He's one of the very few fast guys in this class as well. As I mentioned, he outperformed Judkins and everything with a 0.22 EPA per rush, 7 yards per rush as well, 3.9 yards after contact. Avoided tackle rate could be a little bit higher, get kind of a Devon Achane. That's a good side of that outcome. Guys who are fast but don't have a good avoided tackle rate. The flip side of that would be like a Jahmyr Gibbs, who's about a 33% avoided tackle rate, guys. So your true shifty super elite backs tend to have a little bit more juice there than Henderson showed. The 19% avoided tackle rate, 20% for being accurate, rounding up. Henderson, too, not great in the pass game, but okay. About a 19% target route run rate, 0.09 EPA per target. Versus 8-man box is pretty good, but didn't see them a ton. They weren't terribly worried about selling out to stop him, I guess, but still 2.7 a game, decent results. Enough power there for a back that is more speed. Not great red zone work, had less than Judkins, but still did okay with it. Didn't qualify for receiving EPA, didn't get enough targets there, but a 0.4 rushing EPA in the red zone. Henderson, I like more than Judkins right from the jump. The fact that he outperformed in the same offense is to me always one of those tests here. I'll always harken back to a couple of years ago when I was touting George Pickens, somebody over at one of Matt Harmon's employees, I guess, one of the guys who works for Perception. It's not Matt Harmon. I was like, why does Pickens have such bad grades and Deontay Johnson has such great ones? And obviously now that looks infinitely better because Deontay Johnson's basically out of the league at this point, and Pickens is still going to be a guy that teams want at the end of his rookie contract. But like, it didn't make sense to me, same offensive environment. And I was like, okay, like, why is this the case? And he's like, well, the offensive environment's a big reflection. It's like, it's the same offensive environment. It's like, it was just a bad answer. And it always stuck with me as like, people don't know how to answer this stuff. When you're the same offense and one guy greatly is more efficient than the other guy, that guy's probably a better player. Like, it doesn't really matter what the underlying stats are, even target earning stuff like that, the route shit like reception perception does, which I don't mean to like shit on because like I'm sure they do some stuff great. I don't really care that much about their data, and I know some people out there swear by it. Like, really what you're looking at is just this guy, similar volume, same offense. Why is one good, one's not? And it could just be that they run different plays. Like Pickens obviously running more go routes, going to be more efficient if you're catching those, and Deontay Johnson curl route that doesn't get to the sticks. But the fact that Deontay Johnson doesn't get to the sticks is like, that's why he's not efficient. Whereas Pickens, would get there. And then that's sort of what you're seeing with Henderson versus Judkins, where Judkins, maybe some guys will like him more. They'll look at the tape and go like, ooh, he looks like a real polished runner or whatever. But Henderson's fast. Henderson performed better. You should kind of default to Henderson being the better pick out of those two guys from the same backfield once again. It's similar work too, so it's not even like a Bijan versus Roschon Johnson thing. It's like Roschon looks similar to Bijan in kind of limited stats. Obviously, Bijan got more volume. Bijan also had the draft capital coming in. These guys, I don't know that one is guaranteed better draft capital, and they look kind of the same in volume stats, so favor the one who's better, and that's me, Henderson. Ollie Gordon. I could see some people liking him out there. He gives me big Tank Bigsby rookie year vibes. Shifting us here, 22% avoided tackle rate's not bad. Negative 0.02 EPA per rush is pretty bad. Watching him too, he's like a plotter in a way that I don't think gets a ton of play here necessarily. But then again, you see Tank Bigsby get drafted. He has an okay second year, though probably should have been better than it was. Year one was awful. I think for Ollie Gordon, you're getting kind of a similar thing here where he's a power back, a very good EPA versus 8-man boxes, a 0.4 EPA there. Less good in the pass game with a 0.09 EPA, let's say a 0.1 EPA rounding up there. Decent target per out run rate. Not a ton of avoided tackles compared to some of the other guys, but still okay. He's like not bad. Ollie Gordon is like the kind of definition to me of a not bad player. If he gets in a great spot, if he goes to Pittsburgh and like it's Jaylen Warren and Ollie Gordon, I'd probably go to Ollie Gordon a little bit more. But I don't think he gets great draft capital. Don't think he's the kind of guy in a big board you want to go to your way for early. But if he's going for free in the 18th round, you take him. Going for free in the 20th round, you take him. That's that. Dylan Sampson, I did not see him on anything. I'll put him in. Yeah, I went to like one of the deeper profile lists, and he wasn't on it. Some of these guys, too, are just not going to be in the draft. And it looks like Sampson doesn't have any data. I know he does. All right, there we go. All right, we'll get to him when we get to him. Ollie Gordon, though, I think okay pick overall. Like no real concerns in terms of like him being able to produce if he gets the right opportunity, but he's not a special talent. So those are the kind of guys I think you kind of dial back a little bit. RJ Harvey, who our guy Gabe Davis is asking about before, we're up to him now. A bit of a smallish guy at 5'9", 208, but if you're over 200 pounds, you're in the safe zone. And as Bucky Irving showed, you don't really have to be over 200 pounds anymore. You just have to kind of have the skill set to balance that out. Harvey, not a great avoided tackle rate of 21%, and that's playing at UCF, so playing lesser talent. Still pretty efficient, though, with a 0.2 EPA per rush, a high touchdown rate. I watched RJ Harvey tape, thought he was okay looking to me, kind of seemed like a guy abusing lesser competition was my initial take on him. 11 routes per game, decent target rate, 22% target per out run, 0.2 EPA on those plays. Decent versus 8-man box, didn't avoid tackles very well, but still got efficiency with a 0.33 EPA there. RJ Harvey, good in the red zone, 3.5 red zone rushes a game, good for a 0.58 EPA. Quality competition would spook me a little bit. Don't think he had fast 40 times either. If he were like one of those guys that ran a 4.3 range 40, I'd be there a little bit more. But I believe they have him as like high 4.4s. Check this here. They have him as a 4.41, which would be close. If he gets to the 4.3s, he'd be a much more of a prospect. As it was, though, thought he looked okay on film. Doesn't seem like a crazy legit guy to me. Doesn't run with power either, like a Tyrone Tracy would then he could take a shot on there as a lesser prospect. But I didn't hate him. I think he's draftable. I think he gets drafted. But I don't know that he's like a play you out of your way for in a big board kind of situation. But again, if he's fast, he might get there. But he didn't clock in the 4.3 range based on what I saw on Google. So based off the previous 40s that he's done before and what's out there. So I don't really see prioritizing RJ Harvey, but he's okay. All right, Cam Skattebo. So Cam Skattebo, and I always thought it was Skattebo, but I watched enough of the games now, and it's Skattebo apparently, which is an awful name. Skattebo looks like if he were a guy that were going to be going in the first round, if he were a guy that had legit athleticism, and he probably is the slowest out of all these guys in the class. I don't know how he did what he did versus like legit competition in Arizona State. Like he played legit school, played legit conferences, and he looks like Christian McCaffrey. I'll say it. Like he's a white guy, so that probably helps the comp a little bit. But like you watch him play, he looks like Christian McCaffrey. He's not a burner, but he gets into space well, gets targeted a lot, runs 18 routes per game, about the most of the class, about 0.1 behind Omarion Hampton. Gets targeted 23% of the time he's running a route. 0.5 EPA on those plays. 13 yards after the catch here for him. He's also getting the same amount per catch. He's basically getting targeted behind the line of scrimmage, basically. Point being, though, is like Skattebo did that stuff well. Also, a 31% avoided tackle rate and run plays, a 0.17 EPA. Didn't get stuffed a lot. Versus an 8-man box, he was also pretty good with a 0.38 EPA. And he had a 33% avoided tackle rate versus an 8-man box. Got 5 red zone touches a game. I think, no, he's not as old as I thought. I think I was mistaking him for Ray Davis because he was kind of that same range last year. But yeah, he's 22. Hasn't had a ton of bad injuries. Had, I think, a shoulder injury was his worst one that I was going back. Didn't dig deep enough on that, though. The issue is, like, he's really slow. Like, he clocked apparently at a 4.55. So he's got to get into the 4.4s to have a shot. If he gets to the 4.4s, he's a legit dude. If he does against the 4.4s, you run the risk of him being Dylan Lave, who played better competition instead of playing at New Hampshire. Would be my worry for Skattebo. It's interesting. So it reminds you of MJD. Not a bad comp. That's, probably a little bit less power than MJD, but graded out well for sure. Advance the team to the little board because the videos from a year ago, very good information, and I watch college football. Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate that. So Skattebo to me, look, if he gets any steam and all, I think he looks good. The issue is, I think people were hyping him a little too much on Twitter after that bowl game. And it's he's probably not good enough to be you go in, you draft him really early, you see him up and all that. But I do think all the analytics look good. I think he's probably a practice warrior too, which can help him out a little bit if he gets okay draft capital in a good situation. But he's a guy where, you get him in a Rashad White situation, you get him with a shitty lead back, he could do well. So if Skattebo is going for free, take him. If he's going in the 120s, take him a little bit less. I would take the prospects from last year over him. I would take Marshawn Lloyd over him. That'd be my line. I would take Marshawn Lloyd in Green Bay. Going in next year as the backup with a shot to maybe unseat Josh Jacobs a little bit more. I would take that shot, throw the injury stuff out. I would take that over Skattebo still. Tyron Tracy easily over Skattebo at this point. Most of the rookies from last year, estimate over Skattebo. You're getting closer there. Jonathan Brooks, not over Skattebo. You probably shouldn't draft Jonathan Brooks at all. But I think Skattebo there, if the estimate is probably the line, where I think estimate would go probably right neck and neck with him, and that's fair, where you have more optimism for Skattebo. But estimate at least had earned something in a Denver backfield. Did get benched in the playoffs, though. So Skattebo here, just worry about the profile here with him being slow, not that big. But, man, the performance was great. He's fun to watch, too. He's a cool player. He's a cool player to root for. Maybe a better player to have on your Madden franchise, and then you build him up than his real NFL prospects. But that's where I am with Skattebo. Devin Neal, our next Bucky / Kyron. I do like Devin Neal a lot. So Devin Neal, not a high avoided tackle rate guy, which does spook me a little bit for a smaller guy. 21% avoided tackle rate. Still a positive EPA at 0.16, earned 20.8 intended touches a game, about 18.3 of which were rushes. Decent pass game work as well, 44% missed tackle rate. Not a great target per out run at 19%, but as we talked about, that might not be on him. Might just be more the scheme for Kansas. 0.28 EPA on receiving plays, pretty good. Handled 8-man boxes pretty well, was barely stuffed, 12% stuffed run rate. One of the better marks in the league here, or out of this draft class, going against an 8-man box. Decent EPA on there, still positive is really the main thing. 4-ish red zone rushes a game, 0.3 targets in the red zone a game. Devin Neal looks pretty good to me. I would get the athletic testing. Don't think he has a fast 40 time. I think he was in the 4.45 range. Let me confirm that. 4.5 range is what they have him at from NFL Draft Buzz. So if he's a 4.5 guy, you like him a little bit less. Really, for all of these guys, and Jeanty, I think, will get to 4.55. There's enough reports out there, but he might be a 4.5 guy. Whoever gets to 4.4-ish is probably going to be the prospect that seems up the most. So if Devin Neal could be a little bit faster than he tested before, he's going to look better. As it is right now, though, low avoided tackle rate, kind of. Still not, not a burner. Those are sort of the issues you have. Not great after contact either, only 3.3 yards after contact, which isn't everything, but you're not avoiding tackles. You're not great after contact. Wouldn't say the downside for him is Deuce Vaughn, but I do think there's a little bit of Deuce Vaughn to him. Deuce Vaughn, though, is like a 10% avoided tackle rate guy, just absolutely nothing. Awful pick from the moment I saw his numbers. For Devin Neal, he's not quite there, but he's not Bucky. He's not Bucky. He's not as shifty. Kyron was not great in terms of any of the analytics either, but he got there through volume. I think that's more of an aberration than anything. Devin Neal to me, an okay play, but I think you're a little more too excited about him, or a little more excited than you probably should be. But yes, you still weigh combine stuff. The combine matters for draft capital quite a bit. It matters a little bit less for performance because really what it comes down to is who's ahead of you and are you good enough to earn time on the field? And again, Jalen Wright's the best example of that, where maybe if he played the whole year, Guerendo, when he got opportunity, he was okay. But then even Guerendo playing, it's you saw some flaws in the game. Jalen Wright, I imagine you probably would have seen the similar flaws for him if he had gotten the full amount of run. So for guys like that, I think the combine testing does matter quite a bit because they got drafted where they were going to, but he still defaults performance then as kind of another lens to it, where if a guy isn't a great performer in college, but he's got a clear pathway to a ton of work, then yeah, he's a great play. Devon Achane a couple years ago. If he didn't perform that well analytically, and also he's got blockers in front of him in terms of opportunity to get playing time, even with the athletic testing, you probably don't want those guys at the end of it all, but you still always kind of default to liking guys that are good athletes because they get better capital. Guys who stick in analytics or fades unless Camp News gives us glimpses that the coaching staff is putting more on their plate, working them more in the situation there, like the Kyron lesson. That's probably a good way to look at it. Yeah, I think when you get the report that Kyron Williams is like your third down back, then you play more Kyron Williams. But if you drafted Kyron Williams year one, it would have gone awfully. Like, he was a terrible rookie. So, like you can't kind of lump young guys in all 1-to-1, and you can't lump rookies all in 1-to-1 because they're all kind of, they're all little special snowflakes. Raheim Sanders, the guy I didn't get to watch film on because the numbers, frankly, like I was up actually till like 2 o'clock last night watching film on some of these guys because I just wanted to be prepared and didn't have to do it all this morning. Sanders just didn't grade out well enough for me to go out of my way to watch film. Does seem like a decent receiving back, so I probably am going to watch him at some point a little bit more. I mean, I'll probably watch him today a little bit more if I get time with the NBA prep I'm doing. But a high avoided tackle rate on pass plays, 15 routes per game, 0.34 EPA there. That's good. In the run game, though, 22% avoided tackle rate, pretty mid. 0.06 EPA per rush, not good. First and 8-man box was very good, very efficient there. 21% avoided tackle rate, but didn't see them a ton. Only 2.9 rushes per game against an 8-man box. But a 0.61 EPA is very high there. Sanders, maybe a little bit more juice than it might seem. The core stats aren't very good, though. Not a ton of volume, not a ton of efficiency, not a high avoided tackle rate, not a high EPA. But the pass game work, the red zone work, the 8-man box work give me a little bit of hope for him. What's his 40 time? Raheim Sanders, 4.4 40 time for Raheim Sanders. It's not bad. Yeah, all right. Sanders might deserve a little bit more of a look for me. Yeah, big boy power back, 6 foot 230 is his build size here. If he runs a 4.45 at 6 foot 230 with these numbers, he might be someone to watch out for. The receiving numbers in particular would give me a lot of hope. Yeah, Braylon Allen, he's better than Braylon Allen in the receiving game by a pretty wide margin, and better versus power plays. It was actually my critique of Braylon Allen last year was like, for a power back, he wasn't actually good in power plays. When you have this high of an EPA versus an 8-man box, you're doing something right. So wish he got more volume in college, wish he avoided more tackles, more yards after contact as well, which is what you want to see for a power guy. But he didn't get stuffed a crazy amount. Did well versus an 8-man box. I'll look more into Raheim Sanders right now. Thinking okay play, but these core stats, like, it's not great baseline performance here where he's not getting a ton of volume and he's also not efficient. There's two things that kind of spook me right away. Jaydon Jackson, another player here, about an average avoided tackle rate in college, 23% in college. Avoided tackle rate is sticky to some extent going from college to the pros, but you kind of end up sliding down a little bit. So a guy like Bucky last year was at a 34% avoided tackle rate. And then this year for Bucky in the NFL, he was at, where's Bucky at? This year in the NFL, Bucky was at 21% in terms of his run play avoided tackle rate. So you see how that kind of comes down. Basically, guys who are like 22% in the pros, or in college rather, probably be end up closer to like a 10 to 15% guy in the NFL, which at that point, it's mostly like, does the team like you enough to give you, kind of enough carries to get there? So if that's one thing right away, I would say would spook me a little bit about both these guys, including Jaydon Jackson. But a good touchdown rate, that's a little bit lucky. Stuffed a good amount here at 18%. Positive EPA at 0.12, but not a ton of volume at 16.5 opportunities a game. Decent in the pass game with a 0.41 EPA. Okay avoided tackle rate, but not great. Okay routes per game at 14, not great. Good versus an 8-man box as well, though. So some signs of life there at 6'2", 230 should be. But the speed, I think, for him is not quite as good. Jaydon Jackson, 40 time, checking in another tab. Okay, here, I'll share the screen. So according to AI, Jaydon Jackson, running back from Arkansas, has a 40-yard dash time of 790 yards, which is not, it's not how that looks. 4.6 40 time, that's really tough. That's really tough. So 4.6 40 time for Jaydon Jackson, those numbers, you're probably not getting there. You're probably looking at a deep cut prospect from a couple years ago. Looking a little bit more of a Mo Ibrahim guy, power back, probably not much more than that. But he had some juice in the pass game, so that's how that would look. Jaydon Jackson, I would say your best comp, bigger Jamal Williams would be your hope, where you get a decent pass catcher who's not that efficient in the run game, but gets more opportunity because of the fact he can hold up in pass blocking. But really, Jaydon Jackson, Not a dude for me, unless he had a much faster 40 time at a 4.6, so that's pretty brutal. AI is so useful. AI will make some errors, but look, it's still, the summary helps more often than not. That one was not the most helpful. Kaleb Johnson. Kaleb Johnson people like a lot. Kaleb Johnson, I like a little bit. Some stuff does spook me a little, though. So he's got a 25% avoided tackle rate. That's good. 21% stuffed run rate is not good. 0.13 EPA per rush, pretty good. 22.2 opportunities a game, pretty good. Routes per game, 9 per game, not that good. Target per out run rate, 22%, okay. 0.01 EPA per reception, not that good. 6.9 yards against 8-man box per game is a lot. So that's a lot of dedication to stop him, given the fact that he was on an offense that wasn't that great. But still, 15% avoided tackle rate in those spots, flat 0 EPA, stuffed 26% of the time versus an 8-man box. That could speak to Iowa not being very good, but I would say for Kaleb Johnson, would worry me a lot here that he saw 8-man boxes a lot and couldn't handle him. So that's where Kaleb Johnson would grade out in that part of things for me. He's not like a good power back from the jump if teams prepared for him to be what I would observe from that. 3 red zone rushes a game, not the amount of work you'd expect from a bell cow back who does have teams selling up to stop him that much, but he still did okay with it. 0.2 EPA per red zone rush, 1.2 EPA per red zone target. So Kaleb Johnson, I think, is a better version of me of Quinshon Judkins, where he doesn't look terribly explosive, does have a little more lateral movement. I mean, you could see it here with a 25% avoided tackle rate compared to the 16% that Judkins has. But he also kind of reminded me of a Zach Evans type, where wasn't wowed by the size, wasn't wowed by the speed. Better breakaway speed, I think, than Judkins has, than Hampton has. Probably not as good as Jeanty. Definitely not as good as Henderson, but he's up there with these guys. Kaleb Johnson potentially be drafted RB2, the decent combine, but Hampton feels so much better. That's about where I'd feel with it too. Kaleb Johnson, I'm not sold, ends up a great prospect, or a great, pro in the NFL. I think he's an okay prospect right now. I have seen a lot of college guys I like. Thor over at Fantasy Life, I think does a very good job with college prospects as well. It does tend to view things on a lot of guys close to 1-to-1 to how I view them. He likes Kaleb Johnson a lot, so I would give that a little bit of a boost. For Kaleb Johnson, though, I'm not sold. I think I'd certainly prefer Jeanty. I prefer Hampton. I'd have him close to Henderson, with Henderson having that big speed component to him. If Skattebo grades out anything well, I would probably prefer Skattebo to Kaleb Johnson. But Kaleb Johnson seems like a back who will get work in the NFL. But this is a little bit of tough indoctrination. We talked a lot about Rachaad Whites being the guys that we kind of want in the backfield. For our rookies coming in, I think Kaleb Johnson's got a little bit of Rachaad White to him, where like he's not great at anything, but seems like he'll be able to get playing time and get a shot at doing things. So that's Kaleb Johnson right now, and that's how that goes. Shout out Jordan here. I guess I got to do it. Welcome to the family, Jordan. Jordan, of course, does producing for Stochastic every day, supports me in other ways here, and I appreciate the support the channel here. So welcome to the family, Jordan Klein. Find a membership here on one of the videos that nobody watches. appreciate Jordan here. Jordan, one of the great guys here, and one of the few paying members who actually I've met in real life and hung out with, and been in his house, in fact. But shout out to Jordan. Do appreciate him being here, and he does a great job on Stochastic every day. So watch all Stochastic's content and go, great job, Jordan, in the chat. Give him more raises. Anyway, for Kaleb Johnson, not a bad prospect, but really stuffed run rate for a guy who should have decent power. Seeing 8-man boxes being bad with it, sort of the main things here we're looking for. And yes, we got W's all around here. But yeah, that's my summary with Kaleb Johnson. I think he's getting talked up a lot. I don't think he's as good as Hampton. I don't think he's as good as Jeanty. I think there's possibly some other guys here that he might not be quite as good at. And really, I would say for Kaleb Johnson, faint risk that he ends up being more of a 3rd, 4th round back than a 1st, 2nd round back. And that would certainly be a bad scene if he doesn't go really high on the big board. Jaydon Blue declared from Texas. He's a fast guy, 4.3-ish speed guy. So he's somebody that's going to get probably okay athletic testing, maybe decent draft capital. Analytically, though, not a lot to love here. 0.001 EPA per rush, 0.15 EPA per reception is okay. 31% target route run is pretty good, actually, for a guy getting decent work. Though Blue didn't play a ton of games this year, but had decent work when he did play him. Saw an 8-man box 2 times per game. Not a lot here. They didn't need to do that against him. Did well with it, though. 0.34 EPA there. 6 yards after contact. 6.2 yards per rush. Or actually, no, wow. 8.2 yards per rush. So they were getting the backfield on him, and he was generating some decent after contact production with that, which is impressive to see. In the red zone, he got decent work. 2.6 red zone rushes a game. Not a great EPA in the red zone, but that's not something to worry too much about. Jaydon Blue might be sneaky here. There's not a lot of burners in the class. And again, the athletic testing for rookies is getting them drafted. So I think he's more likely to be a Garendo caliber prospect, a guy that really is not going to be going super highly, but in a class where there isn't a ton of fast guys, and we know the athletic testing is going to matter quite a bit, I would say that Jaydon Blue is something to have on the radar that probably does climb up a little bit more there. In terms of the where he'll get drafted in the big board, probably is a total non-entity. And you have a decent shot here. He ends up like your Jalen Wrights, like he is just a pure burner. But he showed enough here. The one thing I will say, though, is when you have a guy who's super fast and he doesn't avoid tackles, you're kind of limited here where you want him to go, to your Niners, to your Dolphins, to your kind of one-cut, well-blocked, well-schemed offenses. It does narrow his outcomes a little bit. But still, again, he's fast, and there's only 3 italicized guys here. One of them is not even in the class anymore, and Nicholas Singleton. So really, the RB class doesn't have fast guys. He's a fast guy. It's basically all it is. So this point in the list, by the way, these are all the guys that were in the mock drafts. These guys down below were not in mock drafts. I called them from other spots, the top prospects. So we're going to speed run through them a little bit more here because we've spent 50 minutes on the guys that are mostly expected to be getting drafted. Damian Martinez, guy in Miami, looked pretty good last year, right in that Cam Ward offense. 0.24 EPA per rush. Still not a high avoided tackle rate guy at 23%, which makes him a little bit more of just a guy. But he was efficient in the pass game, efficient in the run game. 0.24 EPA per rush, 0.49 EPA per pass. 47% avoided tackle rate in the pass game. Wasn't targeted a ton, but Cam Ward doesn't throw short, so that's a big part of that. Or doesn't throw short quite as much. Versus an 8-man box, Damian Martinez was pretty good. 0.21 EPA there. 2 red zone rushes a game. Was not fantastic in the red zone. Was good enough in everything, though. The volume wasn't fantastic. But I think Martinez flashed enough here out of the guys who are currently not being talked about, of the top draft picks that I don't see in every mock draft. I think Damian Martinez is one that I would highlight as a little bit of a worry because he didn't get the volume, and getting volume is going to portend getting more volume in the NFL. For Damian Martinez, very efficient with it. Decent enough avoided tackle rate, but not great. Could be bigger, but I think he's an okay player overall, and I think he's one guy here going for free. Decent shot. He's like not because they both have Latino names, but he's a Chris Rodriguez type that gets drafted more than he probably should, and has maybe 1 or 2 useful games as a pro, but isn't regularly in a rotation. And it's your risk for Martinez. But still, again, we're talking about just pure speculation at this point. He played pretty well, was pretty efficient, and that's one of the guys in the class that did that. Donovan Edwards, I thought would be better. He looked pretty good in the numbers last year. Fell off the cliff here. Negative 0.14 EPA per rush, negative 0.26 EPA per reception, negative 0.37 EPA per 8-man box. Didn't get enough red zone work either. Again, for a guy who's like the linchpin of the college football marketing, he just was shit this year. So Donovan Edwards, kind of like Blake Corum, looked better the year before he would have come out, and then didn't come out, and then he kind of fell accordingly and then was awful. I think Edwards now is what he showed. If he comes out this year, he might not even get drafted, but if he does get drafted, he just doesn't look like a guy at this point. You can't not miss tackles, 13% avoided tackle rate, low EPA. You're not getting targets either. You're awful at everything. You're not getting enough red zone work. It's a dog shit showing here numerically for Donovan Edwards. DJ Giddens, kind of just a guy here. 20 touches a game, 0.08 EPA per rush, 21% avoided tackle rate, which again, you expect to come down to like a 10% one in the pros. Reception-wise, got targeted a decent amount, running routes and all that, but 19% target per run is actually not that great as an underlying number. Bad EPA there with a negative 0.18 EPA per reception. Saw 8-man boxes 4.5 times a game. Was okay with it. Nothing great. Nothing great in the red zone either. Giddens, really just the guy. Haven't watched the film in him yet. But really, all these guys here at this point, for the most part, are just the guy. But Giddens, I would say, really especially just the guy here. But got decent volume in college, so maybe he can do that again in the pros. Trevor Etienne, a lot less juice than his brother. 22% avoided tackle rate, 0.09 EPA per rush. Didn't get a ton of volume either, with a 16 opportunities per game. Saw 14 routes per game, was okay there, 29% target per route run. Didn't avoid a ton of tackles there, but an okay 0.11 EPA. We could live with that. Him being a shittier version of his brother seems about right to me. 4 rushes per game versus an 8-man box, negative 0.02 EPA per rush there. It's whatever. In the red zone, saw 2 rushes a game, not a ton of opportunity there. Unless Adam says Trevor Etienne is so great and going to be so fast, then maybe you get him more because Adam seems to know his Georgia guys, so I'm sure he's going to hype somebody up this year and they're going to be awful. For Trevor Etienne, though, numerically, seeing nothing really, barely a prospect. I think if he didn't have the Etienne name, he probably wouldn't even really be one, so that's how that looks. Thanks for the content. Look, I appreciate that here. Again, I've mentioned enough times here. I'm very aware of what this content is. It's just me looking at an Excel sheet and stammering my way through the numbers. But please do subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment down below. This really is what this shit, even though it's tedious sometimes, even for me to make the content, it's tedious just to read names and numbers. This is what gets me ready to go for everything else. This is what gets me aligned with where I need to be throughout the year with the data, with knowing these guys. This is what the process looks like. So it's not always fun. As I mentioned up top, it's like doing your cardio. It's like doing your stretching and whatever. It's like walking on a treadmill. It's like, it's not a fun thing to do this stuff. But if you want to have an edge in the big board, if you want to have an edge when we head into the draft process, this is where it starts. So if you appreciate this content, hit the like button, subscribe. It goes a long way here. And check out the sponsors too. Of course, Stochastic, Underdog, Unabated. They're all linked in the description down below. Jarquez Hunter. Another guy looks a little bit better than some of the others. 25% avoided tackle rate, 0.13 EPA per rush, 0.28 EPA per reception, 57% avoided tackle rate on targets. That's all good. Hunter versus an 8-man box. Didn't see him a ton. Got really dominated versus 8-man boxes. 30% stuff. Run rate is awful. So Hunter, that's where he falls apart a little bit. Red zone, also not very good. So you're talking about a guy maybe between the 20s can get some work. Not very good besides that. Hunter, I would say, though, compared to the rest of these, just the guys we're talking about now, looks okay, but really, unless he gets a ton of mock draft steam, not somebody I'm trying to go to. Thank you, Gabe. Best show of the offseason. I'm well aware it's not, but, look, this is where it all begins. Like, when you hear me fucking obsessing over a guy in July and August, it started here, and it probably carried on, and we got some news items, and I kept kind of building the signal there, and, that's hopefully helpful. The flip side of that is that, like, you get Marshawn Lloyd sometimes. But, I can't be responsible for guys hurting hamstrings, ankles, and then fucking having an appendectomy. I can't tell you how healthy these guys' appendices are. That much I will tell you right now. Le'Veon Moss, great RB name, created character RB name. Honestly, looked at a little bit of his film, was a little bit impressed too. Not a high avoided tackle rate, guy. I was kind of surprised to see that. Only a 20% avoided tackle rate because at a 0.15 EPA per rush. You can see that in his film. He does create plays that add value to the team. Not a lot of targets either, though. When he was targeted, he did well with it, 14 yards per catch, but only a 0.03 EPA overall. But 22% target route run rate, not bad. 40% avoided tackle rate, not bad. Le'Veon Moss as well, 8-man box. Saw them 3 times a game. Wasn't great with it. Wasn't that bad. Le'Veon Moss in the red zone, a little bit better there. I think there's hope for Moss. Again, I like the film more. I honestly think I looked him up because I was like, that's a cool name. And that was it. And also because he's an A&M back. And A&M has had a decent, turnout of backs in recent years, including Achane. So Moss, I would say, again, compared to these other just-a-guy kind of players, he looks pretty decent. Worry about the power numbers a little bit. I didn't check his 40 time, which might be important. 4.42 in the hunt to be fast. That can matter. Le'Veon Moss, he's got something. Looks a little bit like Achane. Just not enough volume to be Achane. Achane had volume, but wasn't efficient with it. But he's efficient in getting less volume. Wish you're better than the pass game. Le'Veon Moss, a little bit exciting. They'll sell yourself short Spags. Championships are one there in the offseason. That is true. That is true. But, like in terms of content, like I get it. People would rather watch, Liam and Davis arguing about playoff best ball. I don't know what that does for you at this point. No disrespect to those guys. I love, again, Davis's channel. If you're watching another channel besides this one right now, watch Davis Maddox. Pete's in his offseason mode. Great channel. But, like, this is what you got to do if you want to be good at the big board. This is unfortunately it. Jonah Coleman, negative 0.02 EPA per rush. High avoided tackle rate at 31%. Where'd Jonah Coleman play? Would be another question to have here. Oh, Huskies, 21 years old, turns 22 in August, so definitely a little bit younger. Keep that in mind here. Not a great EPA, though, negative 0.02 EPA per rush. The avoided tackle rate feels like it should be better, to have a better EPA with that. 0.14 EPA per reception, not bad. 20% target route run, okay. 39% avoided tackle rate on a pass play, pretty good. Versus a 8-man box, awful. 3 runs per game, negative 0.17. Not ready to handle the power game. Also not great in the red zone, but got volume there. 3.5 red zone rushes a game. If he were fast, I would like him with the avoided tackle rate. 0.45, 40 is what he's projected for, so not that good. Yeah, Jonah Coleman, not a lot to cling on to here besides that avoided tackle rate. One of the better ones in the class, which does matter a little bit, but not good enough to really cape for him too much. Jam Miller, which is a fun name. I think I put him in for that reason. Nothing here. He's getting jammed up. Stuff run rate of 19% or 17%, 15%, Missed tackle rate is also not very good. Negative 0.06 EPA per rush, not good. Really good in the pass game with a 0.53 EPA there. So he wasn't getting jammed very much in the line, was Jam Miller. Versus an 8-man box, 3.4 runs versus 8-man boxes per game, 0.02 EPA, nothing to write home about. Again, a good receiver, though. Good reception numbers, not enough volume there. Low target per route run rate for a guy that efficient. But yeah, Jam Miller as a runner looks awful. Didn't get volume, wasn't good with it anyway. Didn't avoid tackles. But he was somehow very efficient catching passes. I think that's probably an aberration. Jam Miller, probably not a dude. Watch for your transparency. No BS and put in the work. Happy hump day, everyone. Thank you, Trader Joe. I appreciate that. You make great snacks. You make great chats, and I appreciate both. Dylan Sampson here. So Dylan Sampson, the chat wanted him in. I have not seen him mocked that highly. He wasn't on PFF's top list either. Let's see his 40 time. No fucking way. He ran a... Okay, this can't be correct. So he ran a 4.35 in 2023 and a 4.19. I feel like I would have heard about somebody running a 4.19 40. I don't think that's accurate. Dylan mentioned here. This is talking about him as a college prospect. So Dylan Sampson might be crazy fast, I guess. I'm not buying a 4.19 though. 4.25, maybe 4.3. 4.19 seems implausible. But anyway, back to his numbers. 21.9 opportunities per game. That's good to see. 22.5% avoided tackle rate. That's not good to see. Again, we're talking about an average avoided tackle rate. It's probably going to drop quite a bit. But, you know, Grendo was similar, and Grendo did pretty well. So it comes down to the athletic testing. Better avoided tackle rate in pass plays, but only saw a 6 routes a game, only 1.5 catches a game. So not a lot of volume there to trust. Versus an 8-man box, you saw about 3.8 per game with a 0.17 EPA. 4.3 red zone rushes a game. Was okay in the red zone. Good volume. Potentially crazy fast. Not shifty enough, so he's not Gibbs. But, you know, he already has to be Gibbs. What's his size? Such a weird sentence to say out loud. What's this man's size? All right, go to NFL Draft Buzz here. 5'11", 190, so Gibbs size. Gibbs/Bucky size. That's a weird prospect. So the reason you could fall for a Bucky, you could fall for a Gibbs being smaller, is they miss a lot of tackles. Guy who doesn't miss a lot of tackles and is small, worry a little bit more about the compounding of hits. Talk about that with Deuce Vaughn, which didn't matter because he sucks. But like really, you just can't be a small back and not miss tackles. But fast matters. Yeah, that could be it. Do I want to show? No. Will I? Yes. Want to and will are two different questions. LaQuint Allen. Negative EPA. A lot of volume. Did miss tackles, 18% rate. A lot of routes. 24 routes per game. 0.12 EPA on those plays. Get targeted a lot. Where'd LaQuint Allen play? Syracuse. He's 20 years old, turns 21 in August. That's not bad. Syracuse's offense, though, is kind of bullshitty. Said that for Kyle McCord when we talked about him. Look, that's a lot of routes. It's a lot of targets. The run game, though, he's not offering a whole lot. Those are pretty bad numbers, but he's young. In the red zone, he was okay. 3.8 rushing attempts in the red zone. 0.15 EPA there, which for a young guy, probably performed a little bit less well in the red zone early on. Interesting pass catching prospect. He probably shouldn't go pro. That would be my thought if he's 20. He should probably take one more year. But thank you for the super chat, Justin. I do appreciate it. But yeah, there you go. That's your guys here. For the paying members, I will drop this in the Discord. I guess I'll make a community post too. I'll drop my numbers for the rookies this year and the ones for last year if you want to see both. So check that out on here. Key takeaways for this video, and I think we'll do a summary one when the big board launches as well. Before we do that, please hit that like button, subscribe. Again, it goes a long way for me here. Just one guy here running an NFL and NBA channel. And again, making the sacrifice too. Like, look, there's probably some shit I could do that would get more views right now doing a divisional round preview or some bullshit. This is what helps me get ahead of the curve, and this is what matters to my process. And I've been doing it on my own, so I'm sharing it with you guys, and hopefully we'll get some more shit right here like we did last year. But subscribe, hit the like button. It does go a long way for this video in particular, which aren't going to watch as much. I get how it goes. Sponsors, Underdog, Stochastic, Unabated, check them all. Links in the description. And shout out to paid members too. Got to add on a bunch that joined on Friday. And now our new pal, Jordan Klein, our new pal. He's only a pal now because he's paying me money. But and of course, our friend Jordan Klein, have to add him on. But you too can support the show. Join now below for $4.99. Key takeaways from day one, take Ashton Jeanty. He's going to come up higher no matter what. You're on the faint risk where if he gets teamed up too high, he drops down a little bit more naturally if his RAS testing is not that good at the combine. Frankly, he might not test at the combine with how recent prospects have gone, and he played well enough this year. But anyway, for Jeanty, I would say that with him right now, he's your one guy. Just take whatever the big board opens, take him wherever you want. Take as much of him as you want, as long as he's not going like in the first round immediately. But what's more likely he's going to go like 6th, 5th, 4th round would be my guess. He's going to steam up to the second. I would take him a lot day one and do that. Omarion Hampton to be another one I'd be comfortable taking. If he goes too high, I'd watch out a little bit more. But if he's going again, 100s, going where Jonathan Brooks was last year, I think that's fair for him. He shouldn't go as high as Jeanty. If he's going as high as Jeanty, something is wrong. But I think the comps there, big-bodied RBs, your DeMarco Murray's, your honestly Sean Alexander a little bit. Like he's really like old back. He doesn't feel like a back from this generation, except for the fact he does, catch passes pretty well and avoids tackles pretty well. Besides those two, I'm pretty flat. Watch out for Cam Skattebo. If he gets any sort of positive vibes, he really did produce well in college, and film-wise, he's got something to him. He might be Christian McCaffrey. He might be Danny Woodhead. He might be Maurice Jones-Drew. He's got something there, but if he doesn't get the draft capital, he's probably just a guy. And that's sort of it. I think it's really a Jeanty Hampton thing for me. Kaleb Johnson, people like. You can go there. Devin Neal, I'm intrigued by it. Don't love it. Dylan Sampson, I'm intrigued by, having learned about him here. Got to watch more of that. But Jeanty and Hampton are the two we'll plant the flag for right now. Treveyeon Henderson to a lesser extent as well. One of a few fast guys in the class. But that's it, guys. That's your RB preview. Of course, if you check the channel homepage, you can see the rookie QB preview as well. Next week, I believe we're going to do wide receivers and tight ends because the big board might be launching next week or shortly thereafter. So we're going to do it. We're going to hit them both, and we're going to get ready to go. We'll have our final takes on the rookies and all that coming up as well. But that's the process right now, guys. So I don't think I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow. Probably back for the Friday preview per usual. But stay tuned here. Of course, subscribe. You'll know when I go live here. NBA channel coming up at 4 p.m. Of course, deeper dive for me on Stochastic as well at 5 p.m. if you want to see me talk NBA. So check those out. Gamble responsibly when you're drafting all these rookies in January. Even though it's money time. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at /PlayPod. Thanks for watching this one, guys. Thanks for all the kind words in the chat as well. I'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days and good luck. Bye-bye.